Yo, what is up? We are back with another edition of the Roster Reconstruction Podcast. I'm your host, Corban Ford. You can follow me on Twitter at CorbanNBA, CORBAN We're part of the Swish Theory Podcast Network, so check out Swish Theory online at Swish Theory. On Twitter at Swish Theory, online, swishtheory.com. Really good draft stuff coming up over there. Really good NBA and basketball minds in general over there as well. So definitely make sure to support the good folks at Swish Theory. Speaking of great minds, basketball folks, all of that, we have a fun guest on this episode of Roster Reconstruction. You knew we were talking about NBA draft. We've already had a couple of episodes just in terms of draft philosophy and things of that nature, but I really want to start diving deep into the class. And I say really want to start diving while we only have like 3 weeks left in the draft cycle before the actual draft. But no time like the present. I'm very happy to have Ersin Demir on as a guest of the show. A great draft mind, a great basketball mind. Follow him on Substack. It's EDEMIRNBA at substack.com. On Twitter, it's at EDEMIRNBA. So just make sure to do that because this guy knows his stuff, as you'll find out through the show. But Ersin, how are you today?
Hey, Corban, great, man. Thanks for having me. Shout out to you guys at Swiss Theory, man. Especially my guy, Matt. All love for him.
Yes.
I'm a big fan of the works that y'all doing, man. So it's an honor to be here with you. And let's talk draft, man. That's what I love.
Hey, let's do it. I want to say, as a big fan of yours, thank you for the time. Glad, like you said, I wanted to get you more.
Bro.
Yeah, no, seriously, you are really, really good. Your newsletter, your Substack, people should subscribe to. In-depth scouting reports. I feel several over the course of a week. I couldn't even tell you how many come out during the course of a week. I just know it's several, and it's from your number one guy to guys I'm literally just finding out about, and I've been doing this pretty consistently this season. This is my first real deep foray into it. Still learning from guys like yourself, guys from Swish Theory, but like I'm always learning something new from your work. So I want to thank you for that, and also use that as a springboard to ask, how did you kind of your background into basketball? How did you get into this space? How did you get into doing such really good draft work? What kind of sparked your interest there?
First of all, thanks for the kind words, man. That's really making my day, you know?
Of course.
And, I always loved basketball, man, because it started for me like this. I only loved European basketball when I was growing up. Because it's all fundamentally based, and I always loved the fundamentals, until about 2016 or something. And then I took a couple of years off from basketball, but it's how the world's changing, the American side of the game, intrigues you more and more and more. And then I decided I want to follow the NBA. I didn't know anything about the NBA. I didn't know anything about the draft, the system, nothing. And I just picked a team, man. I just picked the worst team, the Knicks back in the day. But they have AP. It was fun. I knew him. I saw him play at Sevilla, so I was like, okay, it's fun. Let's follow that team. They suck, so you can grow into something,
Absolutely.
That's what I always admired about American sports. You have powerhouses, but every team has its fair shot with the draft. You can be bad for 5 years, good for 5 years. Some exceed to more years, some less. So that was a lot of fun. For me, it was a lot of learning. I'm still learning, but that's how I rolled into it, man. And for me personally, I think one day if I can do something within this industry in basketball, I would love to do it. As of now, it's just a hobby gone out of control, man. And I love doing it, man. Just as you said, I'm pushing out these scouting reports because I'm just watching. In the evenings, it's about 11:30 right here. But also my hoops working hours, with a full-time job and a family. You have the evenings for yourself.
Yeah.
You steal some company time every now and then. So
I get that.
Yeah, bro, you have to make it work, and you have to keep it fun. I'm having a lot of fun doing it, man. That's the most important thing,
No, absolutely. And I'm really glad to hear that. Like you said, I love the way you described it as a hobby going out of control. I think so many of us can attest to that, especially I know I can, and it's one of those things where for many of us who want to work, in hoops and do this kind of full time, that isn't obviously reality for everyone, but you work until you can make it that, or until you're like, hey, let me kind of even it out, whatever the case may be. So I definitely, that was a beautiful way of describing that. And I love the perspective of someone who, like you said, did watch a lot of, EuroLeague overseas basketball and then kind of finding your way to the NBA. I feel like I'm almost doing the opposite. I'm watching a lot of EuroLeague now and
Yeah.
watching a lot of classic EuroLeague games and being like, wow, like you said, the difference in play, right? Not only the crowd and just I'm one of those people who feed off the energy of, the people around me, but also, like you said, the type of play, whether it is more fundamentals or whether it is a lot more intricate in terms of, and I think it's caught up now, but in terms of play schemes and coaching and things like that, it's so cool to see this beautiful game that we all love have such nuance,
Yeah, exactly.
For real, definitely. And speaking of nuance, let's kind of talk about this draft class, because this 2024 draft class, I've been interested in the draft the last couple of years. I think this is my first year that I've really gone in full deep dive, big board personally, mock drafts, all of that. It's the first time I've really gone in that level of depth. But I've been kind of exploring it for the last, I want to say, since the 2020 draft. And so, of course, this year is the year that everyone says, whoo, like this draft class, like it's kind of bad. You're not getting, your Zion Williamsons, your Victor Wembanyama's. Like there's a rough class for star players. And, I would be like, let me do my own research. And having done that, I can say it's not great in that respect. But I do think that it has some sneaky depth, and not really sneaky depth, just some interesting depth. But I want to get your take on it. How do you feel about the draft class as a whole? And has it changed from when you first started doing your draft analysis at the beginning of this cycle?
Yeah, 100%, man. Because the people started with it's a weak class. To me, it's what do you understand under a weak class? You don't have 5, 6 all-stars in every class. You don't have to. I think if you look at the couple of years before, you were spoiled, and this year you don't have the highly marketable guy, just a Victor, Paolo, Chet, etc., etc. You don't have that guy. I think that is a role as well. They're pushing Brownie James now as the marketing guy of this year, right?
Yeah,
And
that's
with
the new
some favorable coverage, they have some French players who are maybe the marketable guys again. So I'm saying it in a cynical way, because to me the strength of a draft class is how many guys are sticking in the league, how many guys can potentially sign a second NBA contract, maybe a third. I think that's where this class has a lot of depth, rotational players. In terms of long-term bets, I think the guys at the top, they need some years to develop. I think that's some of the part as well, but that makes it fun, man. Because to me, this is maybe you're being forced to work hard this year to find value. I think compared to prior years, you're forced to work hard this year to find value, and that's make it fun to me, man. Because you have a lot of good players. Maybe you don't have potentially great players, but you could have them. But you have to work hard for them. It's not really being thrown in your lap like the couple of 2 years. 2021, I started. I don't know much about that class. I was just doing something when I started, But now I'm growing into it, and I'm having a lot of fun, man. Because I'm like, it's a weak class. I don't buy that, I don't buy that there will ever be a weak class. You always find value, but you have to work harder for it this year.
Yeah, you definitely have to make it work. I totally understand that. And I like the way that you said that in terms of teams, because this show is called Roster Reconstruction. And so, one of the key things for this show is talking about the 3 ways that rosters are put together, right? That's through free agency, trades, and of course the draft. And I do think when you are a team and you are trying to build, a roster to compete for a championship, compete for the playoffs, get out of the cellar, whatever the case may be, it is about finding that value and making that team work, right? And like you said, this year, maybe it's not the standout player that it would be for, I don't know, like I said, no brainer a couple years back. Even in 2021, I think Cade Cunningham was the one. So, sure, it may not be that level of, okay, this is an easy fit. We plug and play. Like, this is our guy, our franchise building block for the next 12 years. But that doesn't mean that player isn't there as much. I mean, it kind of does, but it also means in a way that that player might just be somebody at the search and find. And, there's been multi-year NBA veterans in the 2000 draft, right? We got Giannis and even guys like CJ McCollum at the 2013 draft. So, even all these bad drafts, there's somebody there. It just really depends, I guess, on, like you said, the value.
Yeah, exactly.
For sure, which I think is so interesting. So I appreciate you kind of bringing that point out. And so looking at this 2024 class, I definitely just want to kind of talk through some guys here, throw out some names, kind of get your thoughts, kind of explore it a little bit. And I guess I want to start. I mean, this is actually, I'm going to switch it up a little bit. No, I'm not. I'm going to go with the basic one. He's been talked about. He's not my number one, but he is many people's number one. And that'll be Alex Sarr from the Perth Wildcats. 7 foot, 220-pound forward big man with some, defensive big with some perimeter I don't know, some perimeter dreams. I think I like we haven't. In my mind, the idea of it is a lot more tantalizing than actual production, but there has been something there. But what do you think about a guy like Alex Sarr, and do you like him as a number one pick overall, or do you think there's some more competition there for you?
I think number one is confusing, man, because number one is, the guy. I think Sarr is going to be, how do you call it, not a rotational player, but a utility player. You need something
Mm,
else, someone else to set him up. But, I have a lot of respect for his game, man, because if you
yeah,
look at his career, I love this appearance at Podcast P Show, because if you look at his life, he started in France, went to Spain, then he went to America, Australia, now back to America again. I think if you're looking at off-court value, you're getting a lot of that with him, man, because he have seen it all from a young age. He left home, he went to another country, to Spain, to play, and then he exceeded expectation there, and he knew that he had to adjust, because with his athleticism, Europe is not the best place to develop. And I actually liked a lot, man, that he went to Overtime Elite to learn the American game, to learn how to
mm-hmm.
thrive against athletes of his own caliber, because in Europe, there's not much athleticism, man. All these guys staying out in the NBA, they have one thing in common, right? The fundamentals on top of the athleticism.
Yep,
And then after that, he went to an NBA-paced game at his own rules, the FIBA rules. So that was another great move, man. His agency, a lot of credit to them. They really planned his career very well so far. He's now potentially the number one pick. He could be the number one pick. And then for the Atlanta Hawks with Trey, it would be a good number one pick for them, because that's the type of guy that they need right now. But in terms of, the old school number one pick, yeah, he's not really that guy to me, man, because more of a utility player. But, looking at his game, I think he has a little bit of everything, so he can be molded and shaped into a lot of different type of roles,
mm-hmm.
depending on what a team needs. And I think those types of things, versatility has value, man.
Yeah,
Although I think versatility is being thrown easily too out there, because if you can do three things, you have versatility. That's not really the case. But with him, he's a tweener between a 4 and a 5, although be his NBA role. Yeah,
yeah.
man, it's going to depend on the team where he's going. Right now, you can't say. So that's
I
what I like about him, man.
No, I think that's really, really cool that you said that. I love the fact that you called out versatility too. It's a buzzword, right? It's a
Yeah,
buzzword we
exactly.
use all the time. And
Yeah, you read
um
it and yeah, right, okay. Let me check that.
yeah, right up next to 3 and D, which in my mind is like
Yeah,
at some point what is just a basketball player, right? And then like a 3 and D player, it's always like you said, it's just a really funny word to have these like again buzzwords that kind of fly around and are the new thing. But I wanted to ask, I guess looking at what you said, a utility player, and I think that's really interesting because in my mind that's a good fit as well. For what he is. He definitely isn't what I would use another buzzword, which would be generational. Like that's another one. He
yeah.
definitely isn't that in my mind, but he's a really solid player. But for a utility guy like this, which I think is perfect as far as describing him, what is the word I would use? What is the upside ceiling for him? And I don't know how you feel about player comps. I tend to think within reason that they can be useful in terms of drawing an analogy to another player while not being perfect. I think it could be helpful in drawing some, frame of reference, right? But what would you think Alex Sarr as a high end outcome would be? Because I don't see superstar there, but do you see, high end rotation level player, high end starter, second best player in a championship team? Like, kind of where do you see him falling if everything were to click for a guy like Sarr? In this case, defensively, him finding a role, offensively, his jump shot really being a full fledged thing and having some more versatility at that end.
Exactly, bro. But just as you say, man, if everything clicks, because it's dependent on which team he goes and how much they're going to invest in him. But he's going to be number one, so they're going to invest a lot in him, right? That's the logic. But to me, offensive creativity is the most important thing to reach stardom. And with him, if he can improve his handles, I think he has handles for his size. It's impressive, but if you look at it in general, it's still a bit loose. And that's okay for his age because he was never asked to be that guy. He learned it, on the streets. Quote unquote on the streets because in the European youth development teams they don't teach that in terms of to him. He has to screen, he has to do all the fundamentals and for a forward, the big man. So that's why he went to America, to be more free, to learn the game in an American way, because he knew I can go to the NBA. And that's what he needs, man. I think at overtime there was a perfect environment for him to test that out, to experiment with it. I think the reason that you don't hear his name is that not because he wasn't good, but because it was all about the Thompson twins and marketing them. And that was a good decision for them because that really put them on the map, So there's no discredit to them whatsoever in any regard, but that's how the business is. But coming back to the question is offensive versatility, I say, but offensive creativity and handles. Those two things, man, they can really change his whole career because he's going to get the reps, he's going to get the usage, and it's up to him to prove it in a couple of years. He needs time, I think, because he has to grow into a role and then scale up. But with him, the defense, I don't worry about the defense, but the offense, that's where his career, that's where the amount of money that he can earn will totally rely on.
I like that. You're right. That'll be the big kind of differentiator there. For sure. I definitely agree with you on that. I think I'll be curious where, he kind of falls. But I guess kind of asking one last question about Sarr. Outside of Atlanta and I guess Washington, do you think he could fall in the top 5? Do you like another team as a good fit for him outside of those two squads? And kind of which team outside of Atlanta is the best fit for him?
Now, I hope he won't go to Detroit. I think that will really make it hard for him. That's a fit I don't like. I don't like the Spurs fit neither. But, I'm always, what will happen on draft night, man? What if happen if the team trades up? If the team trades up, I want him to go to Utah. I think that's a great fit for him, man. That's a franchise that's going to be patient, And I think having a guy like him, having Taylor Hendricks, two front court pieces they can really invest into, two front court pieces that complement each other. Utah is my favorite fit outside of the top two. If they trade up, because there's no way he's going to.
Interesting. You like him in that front line?
Yeah, man. Covering Markkinen is not really, sure what they will do. Pay him, trade him. If they trade him, what's the plan? They have Walker Kessler as well, and he wants maybe a different role. So it might be some overlap there. But, as you say, roster construction, man, we don't know anything. We're just fans, Maybe you hear something every now and then, but we don't know 100%. But, in terms of how their philosophy is, investing time in a player, I think that's a great fit, man, for Utah.
No, I like that. I think that's really, really a good point. I think it's an interesting team. I hadn't even thought about Utah, but you're right. Alongside a Walker Kessler in the future, one of them needs to be a shooter of those two. But if that's the case, yeah, that's really dope. For sure.
Yeah, exactly. And Taylor Hendricks as well. I think they have, some good pieces without the guard-heavy play. I think that's where the win is for Sarr to grow into something with more responsibility.
Exactly. I like that for sure. Most definitely. I want to talk to another guy, the guy who is number 1 on my board. And he's not number 1 because he's a surefire fit. I just like his skill set in terms of the NBA. And I guess the immediate plug and play fit. And that's Zachary Richeche. Been really high on him. 6'8", 200 pounds, kind of slight kind of frame physicality wise, but like good height. Kind of your 3-and-D wing, I hate to say. The guy really scores off ball shot making. I think he's pretty athletic in transition. I think that is a guy who's plug and play, in terms of being able to defend your position. I'd say maybe 3 and slight 4s, be able to shoot the ball pretty efficiently from outside, run the floor. I'm curious. I guess I'm curious about him. What are your thoughts on Richeche? Second, what do you think about his ceiling? Because that is another thing I'm definitely have thoughts about in terms of him being, yes, positional size, shooting, defensive tools, great. The dude doesn't do anything on ball. And I don't know if that is something that he can become or if he's going to be just that strictly 3-and-D swingman Danny Green type player.
It's tough, man, because context matters a lot with Richeche. And, in the summer, he had an underwhelming summer with the French, I think it was the U18 or the U90s. I don't remember 100%. I think it was the U90s. But he was not good. And I had him at 2 or 3, and I had Ron at 1. That was my list. And people were asking me, why do we have him there? And my answer was, the only thing that's missing, and that's the hardest thing to learn, is offensive creativity. Here it comes again. It's not merely my buzzword, but with these French players, that's the most important thing with almost every one of them. Because what they have in common, Sarr doesn't have that, but Richeche definitely has that. is that they are always so how do you call it? They're always so modest.
Mm-hmm.
They don't play with that FU attitude that you need to succeed in America. They don't
Mm-hmm.
have that. And if you look at the youth development team of France, they all just play a role. They don't have any creativity or freedom to express it. And I think the thing that NBA teams like about him is how he moves, the mobility, how his physical tools are. I think I don't really like that comparison. But if you have, for example, why does a guy like Trey Murphy is being so highly touted? Because he
Mm-hmm.
can, combine his physical tools, the mobility, it's how he moves with the production. And Ricochet has been put in a role because I think with him, all these people are saying it's really hard to play at a young age in Europe, which is
Mm-hmm.
true. But with him, these teams are letting him play because they can earn a lot of money. And most people in America, they, focus just on the thing. But just like when Wanyama was a marketing tool, Ricochet is the same. And I was a bit cynical with the favorable coverage, and I was talking about him actually, because
Mm-hmm.
how ESPN is talking about that guy. Yeah, I don't really. If you ask someone, take all the names away, who is he talking about? You can say hey, Paulo Banchero, Victor Wembanyama. It's really being hyped, and I think he deserves it because the potential is there, because he has the physical tools, he has the fundamentals. I think the shot, the slump that he went into, doesn't really change it for me,
Okay.
but I had him in my top three, and now I have him outside of my top 10 because I didn't see anything about the offensive creativity, developing this year. Some flashes, but they were in the course of the game. They were in the flow of the offense. They were not, I'm taking my moment, this is my team type of flash. And I think to be a number one guy, you have to have that attitude. Sarr
Okay.
has that attitude, but Ricochet doesn't have that attitude. He's too modest. I think that's something in terms of mindset that has to change him. And the reason why I think NBA teams still like him is that, most people forget that as well. They go to the NBA and that's where their really learning starts. Whereas people in general are so focused on we need an NBA ready product. He can't do this, he can't do that. That's not important. It's about can he potentially learn this? And yes, what has he shown to make it feasible, that he's going to learn it. And Ricochet, it's a straight line, man. I didn't see any jump up outside of hard shooting, which he started the year with, really
Mm-hmm.
boosted his stock. And I'm happy for him, man, that he's going to be potentially top five pick, So let's see what happens. But to me, it's just the mindset. I'm still seeing the same player, man, just I saw a year ago. And the bad summer with France didn't really bother me because I know everyone has his role, and France was really bad in the tournament. They were
Mm-hmm.
eliminated early, so but now if you look at his accomplishments, you can't take it away from him, man, because we know he went to the Euro Cup finals. He played against serious teams, man,
Yeah.
and he played in his role, which is very good for his age. That he is not just playing in the league, fighting against relegation or to keep their name in the league, but he competed for a title, man, to the Euro Cup, and he went to the finals, which they lost against Paris Basketball, a much richer team. So
Yeah.
that's all good. So nothing against his accomplishments. It's just for the NBA, he needs that FU attitude, man. But he doesn't have that. So, and that's okay because not everyone can be someone that they are not. Maybe that's not his game.
That is true, and I like that you brought that up. I think sometimes we over it's almost made fun of like that mentality but that's important. Like you have guys who have all the
Yeah.
talent in the world but don't have the edge of okay, now it's my turn, take it over. I think one guy I bring up all the time, and I don't bring him up all the time. I bring him up all the time in referencing this is a guy like Andrew Wiggins. I thought Andrew Wiggins, in college, I thought him in Minnesota. I'm like, this is who he's going to be. That give me the ball, get out of the way type guy, and he just wasn't that. Like he ended up being like a high volume, kind of inefficient shot chucker, when pressed to be in that role, right? But it wasn't until he went to Golden State, kind of found himself as, like you said, a utility player, can take over in bits and pieces down the stretch, little spurts here and there, can shoot a three ball pretty efficiently, play defense, and just play within the game. He's not a standout guy in that way. He's standout with athleticism and his ability to kind of play alongside other high level basketball players, but not in the way of, okay, give me the ball, let me rock, or that sort of offensive mindset that, you would like from a go-to person in that sense. And I don't mean to go, does he have it in him and all those intangible buzzwords. I'm not saying that, but also, no, like I could have a really good jump shot. And if I'm, not really big on hunting for that shot, I'm not a guy you're going to give the ball to down the stretch, but okay, go get it when I'm used to getting it within the flow. And so I do think that's important.
Yeah, exactly, man. 100% agreeing with you there. It's just, where's your value, man? Where can you earn that money, Because it's a
Mhm.
business at the end of the day.
At the end of the day, it's exactly what it is. You said it for sure. And I guess that's what makes me so curious about Ricochet, because I'm going to ask you the same question. Ideal team fit for him, because he's one of those guys who, like you said, he'll fit on any team, I feel like. But I don't think it's about his fit on the team as much as it's a fit on the team with the expectations that would accompany that.
Yeah, it's a tough one, man, because I say he fits in every team. Every team needs that type of guy where, in terms of the 3-point shot, he's going to bring value. But everything else is going to depend on him. And I think with his physical tools, every team would want to have him to invest in him. But to come back at your question, which team is the best fit for him? Yeah, I think with the way the Spurs are building, wing heavy,
Mm-hmm.
I don't really think they need that floor general, because if they do, why do they pay Devin Vassell so much money? I think
Mm-hmm.
they're going to be spread the usage. And I think with a guy like Wembanyama, you don't need the point guard. You don't really need it.
You
I
don't think
hope
so?
he goes to San Antonio. I don't really think it, because what I think, if Wembanyama is really going to be one of the greatest players of all times, I think he should be the guy that has the ball. Not
You know,
saying LeBron James, but LeBron James without point guard would still be LeBron James, right?
agree.
He needs great wings, but he would still be the same guy. I'm not really comparing any of them, but
No,
that's the
no.
expectation from him, right? Let's be honest.
Exactly. No, I get exactly where you're coming from. I guess, I do want to ask you a question off that, because in my mind, I don't think you need like a point guard to dominate the ball. I agree the ball should go through Wembanyama, but I do feel like last year the Spurs had this really weird situation where they didn't have enough guys to get Wembanyama the ball, but had too many people that needed the ball or had the ball to get Wembanyama
Yeah,
the ball. You know what I mean? So it's like, what kind of archetype of player would you like to get Wembanyama easy shots, but almost stay out of the way? And like
yeah,
almost like
exactly.
a Trey Jones, like a Tyus Jones, not Trey Jones. They had him, but a Tyus Jones in my mind. Like, what kind of archetype of a guard do you think that they do need? Because you're right, they paid them to sell that money, but I don't think he's a guard. I think he's more like a wing who can handle the ball a little bit.
Yeah, he's been forced into that role, but I
Exactly.
think I think college is full of those guys, man. For example, not to that he's not in this year's guy, but Taven Lipsey from Iowa State. I think a guy
Mm,
like him is perfect, man. Defensively, Hound fundamentally very sound, and you don't have to give him a lot of usage to really let him impact the game. That type of guard, that's what I need. Not many of
mm.
those guys in this year's class, but definitely the next year. And I like Ricochet there because he hasn't all the pressure. There's the number one guy. He's not going to be that number one guy out of the gates if you push him like that. And the Spurs are built with size, wing heavy, all types of ball runners around the floor, not really
Mhm,
positional. They tried Wembanyama at the 5, didn't work. So I think
mhm.
that's how they will rock, Continue with that. Sell to 2-3, Ricochet 3-4. Roam. I think Ricochet should be roaming around different positions to succeed. I like the Spurs a lot, man. The team, again, not a knock against him, but I don't like Detroit because I don't think, they changed the general manager now, but I don't think he had any idea what he was doing right now. So many ball dominant players, it's not working. It's not working. And you need someone, you need to give the ball to someone. That's
Yeah.
100%, but not too many of those guys. And the Spurs, I think they know what they're doing. I think if they have a shot, they could take him. And if they know he's going to number 2 and number 3, they might trade up to take him. I think he's the perfect fit for San Antonio.
I like it. I like it. I think that's a really solid kind of outline we have here about where kind of he would go. That in terms of the type of player that he is, and a guy that would benefit from that gravity from Wembanyama and provide gravity's own to shooting, but not need and he wouldn't have the threat of, oh well, we got to play through Ricochet. That's just not a thing. So I'm
Yeah,
with you on
exactly.
that. Yeah, for sure. Another guy I want to bring up, and he was number 1 on my board. He's in my top 3. He's number 2 now. No, he's number 3 now because I just moved around. I've been moving this. By the time this goes up, I might have changed it again. But Ron Holland, from G League Ignite, love his motor, love his defensive aptitude, love his ability to play in transition, his physical profile that he brings to that end. Obviously, the jump shot is a big question mark, and I've kind of vacillated between, oh, it's not that big a deal. The form looks good to, well, I've seen a lot of forms look good and the shot not go down. I'm concerned. So I've gone back and forth on that. But what do you think about Ron Holland as a player in total? In totality rather, and where do you kind of have him in your kind of big board?
I had him number one in the preseason, and not to hold on to your takes because I don't like doing that, but he's still there, man.
There
I
he
think
is.
Ron is the most misunderstood player in the last couple of years,
Oh
easily.
wow.
I think I have never seen a guy who's more misunderstood than that, man. It's unbelievable
Okay.
because everyone does it. I look at numbers, you look at numbers, not assuming, but everyone does it. But everyone does it for the wrong reasons.
True.
My way to look at numbers is okay, what is he doing? Recognizing patterns in terms of a role he can play. Can he
Mm-hmm.
play his role? The numbers are very deceptive, because if I look at his numbers, I don't really care about the 3 point numbers. If it's 40%, I don't care. If it's 20, I still don't care. Because he has
Interesting.
to adjust from the high school 3 point line for 4 inches plus 4 inches to the NBA 3 point line. He played as an interior scorer, as a face-up scorer, as a forward, right, in high school, and now he's in wing in the G League. His body is not ready, and now he has to face athletes who are ready with NBA ready bodies, fighting for an NBA job. Because you don't stay in the G League for the money, you stay in the G League because you don't want to play in Europe or somewhere else, or you want to go to the NBA. That's the reason. And he
Mm-hmm.
played there, and the G League Ignite was not a good team. They lacked guard play. They tried it with Buzelas and him. They failed, and that's okay because that's an experiment. And he has grown to me more throughout the season, and not to be contrarian, but just looking at what he's going to offer. You're buying physical tools with him. Every GM knows that he takes time. He's not fully developed yet. He has to fill his frame. He has to get stronger. But the combination of his, how do you say it? I think his touch,
Mm-hmm.
burst, overall quickness is just, to me, is exceptional, man. It's not generational. I'm not going to go that route, but
Yeah.
he can be an exceptional player. He can be one of the best wing scorers in the league if everything clicks. But the if is a very big if because he has to I think he has to mature his game, and that went a lot better throughout the season. He
Mm-hmm.
took much better care of the ball. And to me, the biggest indicator of wing success is offensive creativity combined with taking care of the ball. He had the 9 turnovers in his first game, and it went down. It went down, and
Yeah.
he was okay with giving others room to shine because it was all about him in the first couple of games.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Coach Hart did a great job with him, maturing him, learning him how to be a pro because he was a kid in high school, and not to use it against him, but how it went with Texas committing and decommitting. It didn't really, it was not pretty, to put it
Yeah.
that way. And okay, that says something about a guy as well. Not to talk bad about him because I don't know him personally, because that's how a fan would look at it.
Yeah.
Trent Klaus had the same with Louisville. Both are 100% great guys. I'm 100% sure of that. But that's the media using it against them to push a certain narrative. And I think the
Mm.
G League Ignite has never really gotten their respect, despite having guys like, Jaden Hardy and Jalen Green. Jaden Hardy is now in the NBA Finals, going to play Boston in a couple of hours, but
Yep.
he never got the love. Why should they
Yep.
give Ron the love? Matas never gets the love.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, those are misunderstood guys. But Ron is, I don't think people who, just generally speaking, people who look at the numbers, I don't think they have seen any second of high school film of him. Zero.
Mm.
I don't think they saw what kind of impact he had. I think if you look at what you need to succeed as a wing in the NBA, you have to have an attitude. He has that.
Yeah.
You have to be offensively creative. He is that. You have to have the physical tool. He has it, but he has to put it together, and he's not really matured his game yet, and that's okay because that's where the
Yep.
NBA has to step up and invest time in him to develop him. But looking at the value that he's offering, I'm taking him at face value, man. I think if I'm a GM in the top five, he's there, I'm picking him. For example, if I'm Detroit, it's tough. I think he's the guy that they should pick because if there's one thing that he lacks as of now, because it's all about building up the fundamentals.
Mm-hmm.
It's defensive, it's the defensive mindset because he was never asked to play defense in high school or in the G League. And if he
That's
has a
true.
bad rookie year, it's going to be his defense. He's not going to be defensively good, man. I'm going to give you right that. But that's okay, man. Because year two, year three, that's where it matters. Year one, I'm ignoring it. If
True.
he's scoring 25 in year one, I'm ignoring it as well, man. Because shouldn't be an outlier. Someone has to produce the points. But it's the clean 25 How many seconds did he need the ball per possession? How many usage did he have, etc., etc., etc. He has to grow into something. I think a GM with job security, he can afford to bet on him. But the GM with his job online, he shouldn't take him, man, because it's going to cost him his job, man, because he needs time, And I hope someone will give him time because I think he can be that GG type, Jackson type of guy. How do we let this guy fall to the second round? Because of bad intel, man. If there's one word that I don't trust, it's intel, man, because no one knows. Because an NBA team has zero reasons to spread the truth. Why would they? They get, why would not leverage it themselves, So that's why I don't buy with Intel, man, because everyone acts like they know something, and I don't know anything. And even if I know something, I will keep it a secret, man, because, yeah, if you really aspire to do something in this business, this last thing is, getting a bad reputation like that, spoiling people information that they share with you and trust, But long story short, Ron Holland, man, he's still my number one guy.
No, I like that. Again, you've been making it as you're talking, like you bring up like some points. At Intel is another word I think is overused, right? Because we don't, a lot of, especially on the outside, do not have the inside look of that intel, as you said, for what these people actually are off the court, right? Outside of what we see or what we hear, and that's through secondhand sources, all sorts of things. So I definitely agree with you on that. But I like I think there's something to be said for having someone on the top of your board and sticking with that, and not due to being stubborn or anything. Just like I still believe in what I see. I still like what he's shown so far, and he has developed. And you even brought up in high school kind of how I did notice that as I did my own scouting. So I like you pointed out. But basically, yeah, he's changed his game already from like a forward kind of without any ball handling facilitation, any dream of that, to now a guy who does it, could do it a lot better. But let's remember, he wasn't doing it at all.
Yeah, exactly. And he was never asked to defend or something, and he's going to the G League Ignite. Yeah, it's 1-1 is 2, right? Because it was really a dream to expect good defense.
Yes.
I dreamt about it, to be honest. I took big L there. But he has a choice. And that's okay, man, because if you put it in context, it was not really possible to do it. And others on the team haven't done it either. So, yeah.
It's just one of those things. I agree. Like, exactly. And it is what it is there. So, no, I'm with you on that for sure. I think, again, I ask you, what team do you like him best as? You have a number one. Would you like him in Atlanta? Because that'd be interesting. And then if not, kind of, we'll first talk about what you thought a possible fit of him in Atlanta. And then secondly, just what would be your ideal team for him?
I think Washington is my ideal team by far. I think what that franchise needs is, if you go look at Gilbert Arenas, for example, I love that guy, man. He's anti-European basketball. I don't care about that. I love that guy because he has an attitude. He's stubborn and he believes in something, and he's protecting his, how do you call it, American game. I think he has that same attitude when he was playing, and I think Ron is the similar type of player, man. To be in terms of attitude, I think he can take over a franchise. I think Washington needs a guy like him because Bilal Coulibaly wants to be that I'm the number one type of guy. Right now, it's Poole's team. But if you combine Bilal's defensive qualities with a guy like Ron Holland, man, 1-1 is 2, man. Because I think in terms of fit, those two are building blocks that fit together, one by one. As a backcourt, there's 2-3, doesn't really matter. But Washington is my dream fit for them, man. I think they can really change the direction of their franchise with them. Because I think they can afford to invest years. In terms of their need, of course, it's not really the biggest need. They need everything, but they need a big man as the number one option, and then they need the leading guard as the number two. So, would they go for Ron? I doubt it, but that will be my dream fit.
I like it though. I think that's solid. And I think in Washington right now, you have a team that could use that defensive intensity. I think you have enough room to grow while still playing alongside, as of right now, a Kyle Kuzma, a guy like a Jordan Poole, and be able to pick his spot. So I definitely like him for sure there. I want to talk about two Kentucky guards and kind of where they are, and that's Reed Sheppard and Rob Dillingham. I love Rob Dillingham. He's my number two. I think his offensive skill set is amazing. I think it's NBA ready off the top. I think his shooting is, I think he's arguably the best shooter in this class. I know Reed Sheppard, in terms of statistics, and his shot looks great too, but I think Rob not only can shoot as well as Reed can, but does it in a variety of fashions, off of screens, off of movement, a lot more movement than Reed's done, off the dribble, really good there. Defensively, yes, obviously, and not for lack of effort, but we know Rob is going to be a minus defensively. But I think from an offensive standpoint, from a playmaking standpoint, the guy is electric. And then Reed Shepherd, the guy does it all. Really good shooter, one of the best statistically in this class, one of the best shooters in this class, just hands down. A solid guard. I do have questions about his size in terms of where he fits, because I think you could have Rob handle the ball as like a point guard, even though it would be a weird fit. I don't think Reed does enough on ball to do that, but he is at 6'3", undersized for a shooting guard too. So, but defensively, he's way better than Rob is. So there's kind of intriguing points to both. But we can start with Reed and go to Rob, however you want to do that. I definitely want to get your take on these two guards, where you have them personally, and what do you think is the ideal fit for each?
Yeah, we can talk about both, man. Because if I look at Reed Shepherd, it's not to discredit him because I like him a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But I think he gets the same hype that Johnny Davis got.
I was high on him.
I think, yeah, man, I don't really like where the whole draft buzz direction is going for him, because I don't think he is being asked to be someone that he's not going to be in the NBA. I think if you look at his size, I hate to use size against these players because it's, how God's created us, you can't help that. But as you say, what is he in the NBA? He's not a 2. He's not a 1. He doesn't have the guard skills to be a 1. He doesn't have the size to be a 2 or a 3. He has the rest. So the team should figure it out what are we going to do with him. Pair him with a taller guard, pair him with, God knows who. That's up to them. But if I look purely who he is, I think in terms of fundamentals, in terms of how he reads the game, understands the game, there are very few better than him in this class. I think that's what's solidifying him as a lottery pick. I think the shooting numbers, the context to me is important, because if you look at the NCAA three-point line, the threes that he was taking, it's all been prepared for him, man. He was so good, and not to discredit his performance, but he had everything around him, man. He had offensive creativity in Rob. He had the big names around him to get all the hype off him so he can play in his own style, despite being a Kentucky guy living an hour from the facilities, with Kentucky being his dream school, all the pressure. And really, he really made it happen, man. So a lot of respect for how he is mentally. I think he is tough, mentally tough. And he's tough on the floor as well. He's sneaky athletic. That's another buzzword, but with sneaky athletic, I mean he executes his reads.
Uh-huh.
And, it's more about not physical strength, but mental strength, decision making. I think he plays very mature for his age, and I think he can be one of those impact rookies next season. And is he a top 3 player for me now, man? Really not, because you have to look at the long term as well. And I think his physical limitations will, demand his toll eventually. Because what is his role? I don't know. I have thought about it a lot. I still don't know, man. I don't know what his role is going to be. It is the biggest context, but I don't want to discredit him. I have him, I think, at 11. I think that's fair value. Okay. I think it's higher than it should be. If the defense wasn't there, I don't have him in my first round, man. If the defense wasn't this good, I think the biggest separator for me is his defense, his decision making, his maturity of his game, and making it happen at its size, if that makes sense. He made it happen at his size, and he plays in a tough SEC conference, man. You can't take that away from him, And he took leadership when no one else did. So all of these things he's scoring, man, and that's the biggest number for me. The 3-point number, I can live with that, because if he was shooting 30%, of course he's not getting the buzz, but it doesn't really change his game for me. Because if I look at the jumper, it makes sense. It's correct. It's consistent. He doesn't change it. And it's good. I think he is, to me, he's a bit misunderstood as well, because most people look at numbers and he pops out. And then you can, get too crazy with the numbers and raise expectations, make it unfair for him. Because, I think, looking at his mindset, I don't think he's running away from this expectation, trying to make him happy, So a lot of credit to him. I like him, but I'm lower than consensus on him. And that's putting it lightly.
Yeah, I see. I like the way that you kind of gave a more nuanced take on it. Is there, I guess the role is the biggest reason why you're not a fan of him. Just, what are your bigger concerns on the offensive fit or the defensive fit role-wise?
I think on the offensive fit, because If he's going to pick that high, he has to do more than he was doing at Kentucky. And at Kentucky, the context matters, was too good for him because he hadn't, he shouldn't create. He didn't have the ball in his hands as a ball dominant guard. But, to be growing in a guard's role, he has to, lead the offense every now and then, at least. I don't really see him do that. I think he's more of a ball mover, as a connective passer, as a connective decision maker, as a leader who is the mouthpiece of the coach on the floor. That he can run schemes, he can run sets, but not as the point guard, man. He has to be that leader. How he's setting rotations, how he's rotating on defense, etc., etc., etc. That's what he's doing good. But he is more of that, starring in his role as a role player. That's what I see in him, and that's okay because no one has to be a star. I don't think he has that star potential, but he has the star potential in starring in his role and earning several NBA contracts. And that's a
Yeah.
top 10 pick to me.
There you go. There you go. And so you like his ability defensively, even with his size.
Yeah, of course, teams are going to utilize it. And the
Yeah.
SEC and college, the size is much less than the NBA. And
Yeah.
I think the terms of targeting on defense is being overused because Trey Young started that.
Mm-hmm.
He was successful. He's putting up 30 and 10 for a couple of years, but that's not important for some reason. It's all about the Atlanta defense being bad because he's on the floor. It's just crazy to me. But my concerns with Reed is he's not a one, he's not a two. What is he?
Yeah. That
Switch
1.5,
heavy
I
NBA
feel
game,
word.
he's nothing. He's not one, two, three, or four or five. What is he? And what do you need to complement him, to support him? And that's what an NBA team has to figure out, man. If I was an NBA GM picking him top five, I would be hesitant to pick him, to be honest. Now, if you're gonna compare it to Ron Holland, I would be much comfortable to pick Ron Holland because I know what I can get in the future. But with him, man, it's just to me it's boom and bust. And those type of prospects are the most dangerous one because those are the ones who get the most hype.
Yeah. I mean, he definitely has gotten a lot of hype for sure. Um, so I definitely agree with you. That I think that's really interesting, just kind of the outlook on him. And I am concerned, like you said, I have him at a 1.5 positionally on the offensive end, and that does bring an interesting kind of concern there. So yeah, I definitely get that. And then looking more toward Rob Dillingham. Obviously defensively the issues are there, but what are your thoughts on the offensive skill set? Are you high on? Do you think it's translatable? How do we feel?
Man, if you look at his handles, I don't think you have many better prospects in a couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
He's at the top. Not the best, but he's at the top. And that's where it starts. His offensive creativity is by far the best in this class, by far. And that's an understatement. I think he can take over a game, man. He is that. I think that's why he went to Kentucky, because he's that hooper who's learning to be a basketball player, man. If he knows it, and I think he has a great year on that regard.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to be in the league for a long time, man. He's one of those guys who can be an all-star in year two. I think because the team, they know they have to put the ball in his hands, but he's going to make it happen, man. And not to compare them because they're both undersized, but I think the impact that Trey Young had at Oklahoma, he had it at Kentucky. And to do it at Kentucky is much tougher. Of
Mm-hmm.
course, the points differential is different, but the impact that they have to me is similar. And to
Interesting.
me, in the NBA, that will continue. But he needs the ball in his hands, man. The biggest investment in him is that you have to put the ball in his hands because you need his offensive creativity for himself and for others, man. I think he's one of the best pick and roll playmakers in this class.
Yeah.
He reads the game, man, just like he's 30 years old or something. It's crazy. I think the basketball IQ is off the charts with him, man. And on defense, yeah, it can change. John Morant is how much he's in max contract, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why shouldn't the drop get a similar thing like him?
That is true. I hadn't even thought about that. You're right. Like defensively, he's not great, but there are other guards that have similar offensive skill sets and that are not great defensively.
Yeah,
So
you're always going to have that. You can't take that away. But that's the amateur analytics people
mm,
playing rooms like that, and that's not making it personal toward anyone.
no,
But that's how it is, man. Because the numbers. Sometimes it's more about the numbers, not
yeah,
about numbers.
it's not just that. No, I get you. And I mean, I have watched his defense, and while he has been a liability there for sure, I don't think, like I said earlier, it's not for lack of effort. I do think he does a good job of trying to navigate screens. I think he uses anticipation well. He could use athleticism more on that end, maybe than he does, but I mean, at the end of the day, it's not like he's a total like turnstile defensively, and so I do think yes, he'll be attacked. A lot of offensive guards are attacked, right? But
Yeah,
I think
exactly.
offensively, yeah, he'll be amazing. I really am almost super high on him on that.
Yeah, 100%, man.
For real. And so my last question on those two, real quick, what are your ideal team fits for either of those guys? I know Reed's a little bit later in your personal mock, like later in the draft potentially, but if you wanted either to be on a team that you're like, you know what, that works, that's like semi-attainable for them, what team would you pick for each?
For Reed, I would pick Utah.
I
Man,
like
Utah's a popular team to me. I don't know
I'm about to
why.
say they popping on this
Because they
show. Yeah.
don't really have that old school point guard. They don't have that. They have Keontae, Sexton. They both are this combo guard type of guys.
Yeah. All
And he
combo
fits
guard.
between them. That's what I like for him. That he can be Reed plus with more balling skills. Maybe he can learn some guard skills. Who knows?
Yeah.
I think I like that fit for him for the long term. And for Rob, man, to me, Rob fits everywhere. Man. If he goes to Washington, they have the same type of franchise guy as they will get with Ron Holland. That's my favorite fit for them to Washington
Washington.
because you already have the guy who's going to make up for his defensive errors. Not in terms of effort, as you say, because he shows effort. But with Koulibaly next to him, I don't really see that 30-point score in Koulibaly, but I do see it in Rob, man. That will be an electric backcourt. Both very young, both seen a lot, in terms of how their path to the NBA have looked like. And I think Washington is my favorite fit for Rob, man. The San Antonio fit is, yeah, it's been pushed a lot, but I hate that fit, man. Just because it's when Wembanyama is there, man, you can't be the number one guy, and Rob has to be the number one guy to make it happen.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that for sure. I think San Antonio will be interesting. I agree with you to the most part. Like, I think the balance of having a guy like Wembanyama would totally make up for the defensive struggles that you get from a Rob Dillingham, right? Offensively, can Rob kind of balance his own scoring with Wembanyama? That's the intriguing part. But to see a 1-5 pick and roll between those two, that would be nasty. That would be nasty. But
that will change the course of the league, man. But yeah,
listen,
but it's giving to him is taking away from the other, So the team has to balance it.
I see what you mean. That is really interesting to kind of get that for sure. One team that's been talked about that's not a good fit for Rob, I want to get your take on it, has been Houston. Everyone's like, he can't go to Houston. They already have guard. They don't need Rob, this and that. Do you feel the same way? Do you think that he could find a role there? Like, what do you feel about him potentially at 3?
Nah, I don't buy that because
you don't like that.
If you look at Boston, for example, why does it work between Jaylen Brown and Tatum? Both ball-heavy wings. They made it happen.
They both are able to make it work, yeah.
Yeah, they made it work because they sacrificed at the guard spot. Okay, in Houston, is Jabari the number one guy? No. Alperen Sengun, can he be that guy? He can. Is Jalen Green going to be that guy? He can still as well. They have Amen Thompson and I think Rob as well. Look at all the versatility. To me, that's real versatility, man. Because you have 6, 8, 7 guys who can do so many things, man. It's just crazy. In terms of roster construction, you have so much power. If the opposing team can take away as long as they want, okay, they eliminate Jalen Green from the game. Rob can step up. I believe in Amen in the long term, especially in his jumper developing. They have the role players who are already accepting their role, man. Tari Eason, Cam Whitmore. They know I'm not going to be the number one guy, but this is my thing. No one's going to take it away from me. And they have a coach, a people's guy, who can really manage that, man. If you look at Ime Udoka, I think he can turn Rob into a star, man, with his personal, etc. But not by taking away from Sengun or from Green, from Jabari Smith in that regard. And to me, Fred VanVleet is temporary. To me, Dylan Brooks is the Udoka on the court, the culture setter. He's going to have a role, but he knows I'm not going to be a star on this team. I have the biggest mouth, but that's his strength, man. Because I think he's one of the best teammates a young player could have. Takes away all the attention, has all the experience, has the crowd against him, teaches those guys how to handle that adversity. I think it would be a great fit for Rob to go to Houston, man. If he at 3, why not? Yeah. All these messages about them trading the pick, man, I would like to see them trade the pick. But next year, same problem. You're going to get a top guy, but who are you taking away from on that team? Not very much possibilities. You just better add to the team They already had 41 wins, and with him, they can maybe go to 50, maybe go to the playoffs.
Yeah.
So I think not to be contrarian, but to me,
Oh no,
this is my logic.
I like it. No, I think I totally respect that. I definitely appreciate the nuance that you gave to that answer because it is one that's interesting. I don't think there's one definitive answer there. I definitely don't think in this class with these teams in the lottery that there's one team like, yep, can't get this guy. Like, nope, where do you have this guy? I think all these players, for better or worse, have that, to go again with that buzzword, the versatility to kind of fit in.
Exactly.
However it works, right? So no, I'm with you there for sure. Just want to close out here with just a few more names, kind of get your take on. Stefan Castle and Matas Buzelis have been some intriguing wings that have been kind of in the top lottery, or in the top half of the lottery for several, mocks that we both, I've seen your mock. I know they were in at certain levels in yours. I've seen others as well. How do you feel about those two players? Stefan Castle, defensive minded, very good there. Thinks he's a point guard. I don't think that he is. I think he's a defensive minded guard with some point guard skills. A second side ball handler, maybe. The shot is obviously a big issue, right? Montes Buzelis is like a jack of all trades, master of none type from the G League Ignite. Love his length and wingspan, but still have questions about his total fit. Again, like where exactly does he flourish best? But I want to get your thoughts on those two players.
Man, if I look at Stefan Castle, I think I agree with you there, man, because all these 6'7" types ball handlers, they've been pushed into a guard's role. Yeah, I think by lack of better, they play in these roles sometime. But at UConn, yeah, man, he was that ultimate connecting piece, man, because he started the year with the injury, and then he had to grow in his role. And I think what really changed it for me were two shots against Alabama, man. They left him open, boom. They left him open, converted again, man. And he wasn't really phased by it, because that can do a lot with the guy's confidence if he's not respected,
Very true. We've
especially
seen
with
it.
his reputation. And then
Mm-hmm.
he answered them, man. And then he forced them to respect him as a freshman. I think to me that was in terms of mindset, yeah, man, this guy's tough, man. Because the rest he has it. I think he has that mindset, the team first mindset. He's one of those guys that doesn't really have to have that, FU attitude to really succeed because he can do so many things on the floor. He can be taking over a game one night. He can let a guy take over the next one. I think he has a really mature games on the defensive end in terms of how he's rotating on defense. I think that's why guys like Hurley, they were forced to play him in a bigger role because he was doing a lot of good things, man, in terms of, playing a total game. Because to me, what is he? I don't really know that. I'm very sure he's not a point guard. That's something I'm very sure of. But
Yeah.
it's okay. He doesn't have to be a point guard.
No,
And, because he doesn't shoot well now, because that doesn't mean he's going to never shoot well. I think that's being overused in terms of, yeah, man, he shoots 30% from three. He's missing a couple of open ones. He can't shoot. Boom. I think that's a bit immature to me because the jumper needs work 100%. And maybe it needs to work mechanically or mindset, man. Maybe he needs confidence. And that's why I liked that Alabama game because he was left open. They ignored him, man. They were just daring him to shoot. And it was like, okay, I'm going to make you pay. And he made them pay, man. I think that's, a confidence booster for him because after that, man, it was just him. Man, you just feel it. Of course, they were favorites. It was not that he changed it for them, but he had that freshman impact that you rarely see, And to come back at, well, where does he fit? I don't know, man. He can fit on every one of the. I really don't know. That's
No,
really a tough one.
It is, especially like you said, the role that he has for himself is obviously different than the role another team might have for him. But you
Yeah.
obviously also get the skills he brings to the table. Defensively, the plug and play, you get run a pick and roll, make a good read there. Not a guy you get the ball to and say, play through him. We need you to make high level reads for us, and not a guy where like, okay, you're a sharpshooter, but a guy who can make a shot as well. So no, I agree with you on all counts. I think that's a really, really solid kind of summation of his game. But you look at a guy from him and then move on to Buzelis again, like a bit of a different fit. I like him. I just don't know where he would be like in the back half of my lottery. And not back half, that's not true, but closer to the middle. I'd say between 11 and 13.
Yeah, man, that's fair. Because to me, Buzelis is the number one baller TV type of guy, man. Because the highlights,
Mm-hmm.
You get in love with the highlights. I saw
Mm-hmm.
ESPN having him in one. I was like, damn, man, yeah, there's something fishy going on there. That was the first thing I was thinking, because if you look at the NBA, why is he number one? Why 6'10" ball handler? And
Mm,
Paolo was just drafted, so I understand why he get the bars at that time. Because in terms of not how they look, but how they built, they are similar. He's not the physical specimen that Paolo is, but the size and the ball handling, it made sense. His handle in high school was a bit loose for me, but he made it happen because it looked good because he was so tall. But with the
yeah.
same handles at 6'3", man was like, what is this guy doing?
Mhm.
And, that's maybe putting it a bit worse than it is, but I'm trying to say that the hype is unfair to him. He went to the Ignite, which was a good decision to really grow from that hooper mentality to a pro. And he had to share the same with Rob, two similar guys mentally in terms of that aspect. So I like that fit. And he played well, man. He played in the scaled down role. He took over when he had to. Defensively, he was bad, but that was expected. No one was good in that team. I think it's better unfair, man, because not from you, but from the public speaking generally.
Yeah, of
Because
course.
what is he? I don't know. He's 6'10". He can handle the ball a bit. His rim pressure is not good. It
Mhm.
was a lot better throughout the year, and his touch around the rim improved as well. So those are positives. But in defensive end, the simple off-ball reads, damn, it was not there, man. I think with the difference with Ron is that he was really getting the idea of I am doing this now. If you look at him on defense, I am doing this now. He was making the reads, but he couldn't execute them. And then the injury came to end the season, so that was very unfortunate in terms of timing. But with Motos, I didn't have that feeling. And I looked back at a couple of those Ignite games. I was like, okay, but what does he do as a weak side helper, for example? Get a couple of block shots up. Okay, well, it's nice, but on an NBA team, if you look at his frame, who's going to ask him to be a weak side defender to defend the guy who's going at full speed to the rim, ready to posterize him with his frame? Okay, that's not going to happen. So to me, what is this guy going to do? Especially as I struggle with Reed, is he a one or a two? I struggle with Matas. What is he, man? Because he's not a one. He doesn't have the creation for other skills to me. I think he is better off ball, but this whole product has been the on ball production. So that's maybe confusing to NBA teams as well. But what is he? I really struggle with that one, man. He can go to every team and be something else.
Mm-hmm. No, you're right, and I think that's a really interesting point. Like, if he a shooter on one end, is he more of a playthrough guy for Atlanta? I'm not saying go to Atlanta, but I'm just saying is he that
Yeah,
there? It really does depend. You're right. It's very there's a lot of volatility there. There's a lot of flux there for sure. No, I agree with you
yeah,
there.
that could be a value as well, because you can maybe shape him into a different direction. For example,
Mhm.
Houston. Why shouldn't he fit in Houston? If there's one thing that they are lacking is, the of course Amen is at that, but the ball handler next to, for example, Tari. Play
Yeah,
Tari and him together. Play maybe Cam, Matas, and Tari together as a second unit. Those three guys make him play through them. They all have the certain things to add, but picking a three, I don't know, it could be. But you take it at face value. What does it add for the team? And you're just rolling with it. Just like the Spurs, for example, in the 2021 draft, they picked Primo, right? Pop one of them. They just took him. No trading back, no nonsense.
no, just took
This
him.
is the guy we want, and I think a team should do that if they have a good idea. But yeah, I struggle with him, man. He's a very tough evaluation. But what do
Yeah,
you do with him? I don't know.
that's the big question for sure. Yes, and then I just have a few more guys to run down real quick. Well, a guy I'm very high on is Tyler Smith from G League Ignite. I think the dude can come in. I'd love a shot already, ready-made shooter. I think that he's a connective player in your front court that's pretty solid. Good floor spacer defensively. I think doesn't he get stronger, but I think he does a really good job of moving and showcasing the versatility there. So that's one guy I definitely want to touch on. And then I gotta talk about the bigs real quick here. Between Donovan Clingan and not Zachary, sorry, Donovan Clingan and Zach Edey. There you go. Both those guys have gotten a lot of love. I think Clingan a lot more than Edey, but I don't know how I feel about Clingan so high. as he's been drafted. I just don't know what I've seen from offensively, long-term play. Like, I have real major questions on that. So I wanted to get your take on Tyler Smith, Don McLean, and Zach Edey, just to kind of finish up with some bigs here.
Yeah, man, Tyler Smith. I think which team doesn't he fit? That's the main value with him. If you look at, for example, Knicks, of course they're not gonna be high enough to pick Tyler Smith, but everything can happen on draft day. Maybe we'll trade up. I think with his size, with his lack of needing the ball, with his off ball value, with his he's not just moving for the sake of moving, but he's a good cutter. I think he relocates to the spots that he's going to. He does it very well. He's those Ayman plays him very well. But I think he still has to mature his game. I think if I look at his career, he's one of those guys who wasn't never asked to defend. He was big, and he was having an athletic advantage that helped him. But other than that, was he really taught how to defend? I think that's what I doubt. I think the G League Ignite tried to teach him that, but they didn't have the personnel, and the incentive to win games in the G League. So it was a weird context there. But if you look at this play comps to me is always fun, man, because it's all about having fun, right? It's never going to be one-on-one careers.
Exactly.
But the Channing Frye one, Cleveland Cavaliers Channing Frye. Do we take that guy top 10? I would.
Cleveland,
if he's the value that I'm getting, I'm taking him top 10.
Oh, you mean in this draft class?
Yeah.
Or you mean in general?
With Tyler Smith, if he is that guy on the Cleveland Cavaliers, the Channing Frye, do you take it? I take him.
I mean, yeah, I know he's going to be a good shooter, space the floor, one of the best out there. Younger too, yeah.
I think that's the value. If that's the value, I'm taking him there because I think he can be more than that. But when I really was focusing on him in the G League Ignite games, it was a couple of months back, man. After that, I've been ignoring him, so I haven't really been having an update for myself on that end. But if you look at the jumper, that's where it starts.
Yeah,
you can think, damn, man, this guy clearly has a lot more to offer. And on the defensive end, at times, I don't think he has an idea what he was doing. But to me, those are the most fun type of players, man, because the general opinion on a guy like that is he can't defend, etc., etc., etc. I'm picking him in the second round. Okay, but he is showing a lot of good things in terms of how he's reading the game. I think he went from being, I think to me he was a bit shy at the beginning of the year, and then he was more present. I think that helps him as well. That attitude. Of course, he's not going to be a guy like Ron Holland, but I think that was a part of it to me as well. Okay, that's something there. You want to see these guys succeed who are modest, but who has, you recognize as a guy sometimes, right? Okay, he can have an attitude, but he's modest right now. I think I had the same with him, but it's getting a bit, dreamy like that. But yeah, man, I think at the beginning of the year I had him top 10 just because of the archetype, because he has the size, he doesn't have to handle the ball, he doesn't have to protect the rim full time, but he can, scale up and down in terms of how a team is scheming. 4 out, 5 out. The term small ball 5 is being thrown to every tall guy who is going to be the de facto 5 because of lack of size. But he should never be a small ball 5 to me. He should always be a 4, maybe a 3 at times, especially if he's learning how to handle a ball a little bit, because that's something that he doesn't really have to do in his role. But to come back, to the conclusion, where does he fit? I think the Knicks, man, the perfect fit, man, because I think he has everything else, but he just doesn't have to be that guy, for example, a guy like Julius Randle, but he can be the floor spacing. And I think what is unfair to him is if you look at a guy like on the Pacers, I forgot his name. I think it's something with Smith. He plays at the 4.
Jalen Smith.
Jalen Smith.
Mm-hmm.
I think they look so similar. I think that's why they compared him to him. But in terms of defense, he never picked it up. And at Indiana, he doesn't have to because I think their defense is not good. Their offense is very good, but that's why he fitted there. But, I'm getting out of control, man. But
no, I see what you're saying. I agree. I think you're making a really, really good point. No, 100%. In terms of, again, it comes down to fit, I think, and the value added off the top. Like, yes, what he can be, we can talk about that down the future, but what he is right now is also important. And depending on the team he falls to with that shooting ability, I think it's really, really solid.
Yeah, man, because sometimes it's easier that, man, because with his jumper and his size and his need and how a team could build around that need is just the fit is too good, man. And sometimes a simple role is a good role as well.
Yeah. And if it works out, that's ultimately what this draft is all about, right? Trying to find that value there for sure.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And then lastly, Zach, Edie, between Klingon and Edie, you like, I imagine like Klingon best, but who do you think long term, I guess, has better potential?
It's a tough one, man, because they are similar to me in this
Me
regard.
too.
Is that they are rim dominance. When I see someone
Mm.
tweeting the combination of Klingon and 3-point shot, I click that away because that's just basically the lazy you have to shoot type of mentality. You don't have to shoot in the NBA. Really, you really don't have to. Of course, most players have to survive, but Klingon's game is to me is he is going to be productive even without the jumper. Because if what I like about him is I think this year is really strengthening that compared to last year is how he's using his screening to gain his opportunities. He's a pure play finisher, not a utility player. But in terms of his screening, not to call all Americans bad screeners, but the reason why Team USA is needing Embiid to play for them now is they don't have screeners. They have Bam Adebayo. Name a second one. Well, was by de
I don't
facto
know.
the other guy. Right?
Maybe
So
Anthony Davis. Yeah.
yeah, but that's where it ends, right?
That's literally
And
it.
with
Yeah,
him,
that's a hard stop. Yeah.
you get him with that man because he is being taught the game around American athleticism in the terms of with the I see the fundamentals of the European screener in him. I think he's one of the best team players out there. With a guy like him, you have a winning piece in your front court. And I think that's where all teams are losing, man, because all these successful teams, for example, the Celtics in their championship run with Robert Williams, because before he went injured. I think a guy like him is, in terms of impact, that's how I see Donovan Clingan. I see a lot
Mm,
of similarities between them, even with athleticism, because I think he's more heavy-footed than Robert Williams in terms of verticality. But in terms of how he moves, I see a similar thing with him. I don't know. Cross-racial comparisons are weird for some reason.
I know people. I don't. I
Yeah,
tend to enjoy them. I think it adds some more depth to it, and sometimes I obviously get a better feel for those.
yeah, exactly. But I think Robert Williams, Boston Celtics, is a great comparison for Clean, man. In terms of the impact that he's going to have on a game. Robert
Mm-hmm.
Williams scored 5 points a night, but he was the difference between winning and losing for Boston, right?
Yep.
He made life easy for Jalen Brown and Jason Tatum. I think Donovan Clingan is going to have a similar, type of impact. But with foot injuries, it's tough, man. How is the team's due diligence going to look like?
Yeah.
Foot injury is something that people are maybe forgetting about if they have in top five. Man, I'm guilty to it as well because I have no, medical background. I don't know anything about that. I know
Mm-hmm.
that the foot injury is an issue, but that's where it ends.
Yeah.
And I know a team's decision making is going to look a lot different, and they maybe could lead him falling to 9, for example, for Memphis, which I think is the best fit for him with a guy like Jar,
Yeah.
because he
Jumping that
can
back
play in the
line.
Steven Adams role with the production. Because Steven Adams was just, an offensive rating is going down with him on the floor in
Yeah.
terms of, what does he do? I think Klingon is his best own playmaker with his screening and with his rolling. I think he's one of the best off-ball movers among big men in this couple of last drafts. I think to me that's his value, why he's
Mm-hmm.
top 5, and how a team is constructed. With the goal, we want our offensive rating at par or go up. He can put up 10, 12 points a night, just like, for example, Rudy Gobert. Of course, we saw that jumper over Jokic, right, in the last game. Yeah,
Yeah.
but that
Who
was
missed? Who
crazy,
could?
right?
Who? Nobody missed that. Absolutely.
Yeah, man, it
That
was
was wild.
crazy.
That was
But that's
wild.
not his role. That was not his role. I think if you look at Rudy Gobert, he's just a garbage point collector, man. I think Donovan Clingan is going to be that plus what he creates off his own with the screening.
Mm-hmm.
10, 12 points a night, that's all he needs, man. Rebound hard, deter rims deter shots at the rim. He doesn't have to be a shot blocker, man. He's not a good shot blocker, but he's elite at deterring shots at the rim, man. Because he has that impact that Chet had at Gonzaga. You don't try things with him at the rim. I think in the NBA it will continue, man. But compared to Chet, he has the body, man, to really, play big boy basketball between those big bodies in the NBA. And that's why, to me, he's a top 5 pick, man. But if he's going to learn how to shoot, etc., man, forget it, man, because all the value goes away.
Yeah. No, excellent points. I literally, like, if it's one of those things, that's a swing scale, but it's also not something that you put like, oh yeah, let's bank on that. Absolutely not. Like, let's see what that
If
looks
he can
like.
add it, great. If he doesn't,
Exactly.
okay, no problem.
There you go. And again, to kind of lend to what you just said, I saw a game, Kings Thunder years ago, and Steven Adams made multiple threes in warmups, multiple. And I was like, wow, the dude could shoot the ball. I think he took 2 that whole season, missed both. Not his game. Now he does. These NBA players, ladies and gentlemen, everyone of all over, like, they can play basketball. They can play basketball, but that's not their role. Anyone can make a shot. They are one of the better people at making shots, but it's not their role. Yeah. So to say, oh, wow, he flashed the 3 in warm-ups and workouts. I'm sure a lot of people did. Dwight Howard has flashed the 3 across, a decade and a half of basketball. Wasn't ever a 3-point shooter, but can make a few here and there. Could shoot in warm-ups is not his game. And you have to remember that role is important.
I think that's the biggest nuance, man, to Klingon.
You said
the same with the Edie as well, man, because with him the same. I saw a tweet of Kevin O'Connor, and I always laugh when I see his tweets, man, because that's where I get cynical, because that's just draft Twitter in a nutshell for you, because those guys are the perfect intel guys. For example, I'm not going to make it disrespectful to your podcast or something, man, because I don't want to use this platform to shit on that guy.
No.
For example, last year with Bobby Clinton. Yeah, man, I have intel. He's going to OKC at 12. Intel. He's going to OKC at 12. Guy foresees his college eligibility, takes his name out of the draft, bro. Where in the world, man, makes that sense?
Yeah, it
and no one can convince me that this type of influence that we all have it. Because I'm 100% sure these NBA teams read Twitter, read what we are doing for free for them. Because scouting reports, but I'm doing free work for someone else. Someone else, I'm pretty sure if they use it, I'm honest
getting value from that. Yeah,
they're getting value from it. And the people with those type of intel do the same. Of course, NBA teams know what they're doing. But for example, if a guy says something like that, it's just crazy, man. Because in this instance, he was saying, yeah, man, 3-point shooting for Zach Edey. And go away with that, man. Because Zach Edey is the biggest dominant big man that college basketball, as I personally have seen play college basketball. If you have that type of dominance interior, why do you let him shoot threes? What's the value, man? Why do you let him do that in terms of really impacting his game? Because if you put him down in the block for 50 minutes, altering shots away, rebounding, blocking shots, forcing teams to shoot threes, and guard that's the value that you're getting, man.
That's the value you're getting for that.
And he can play 20 minutes a night, maybe 15, maybe 10, but a team's defensive rating is going off the roof with him on the floor. And I think on offense, he can big boy everyone that he wants, man, because an NBA team loves to switch. And Purdue, who is Purdue switching to? Braden Smith? Then go away, man, because if they have some good players around him, they will win a national championship. That's where they lost it, man. Not because UConn was good. I can't take it away from them. Yeah. But they have, for example, if they had the backcourt that UConn had, switch, they would have the same impact. I'm 100% sure. With Zach Edey.
I think you're right.
I think in the NBA, this is a similar role. Without the production, no one is going to ask him to shoot 40, score 49. That's crazy.
Yeah.
But to me, does he fit in NBA? A year before this, I would say no. Because I was too blind with, okay, he can play 20 minutes a night, but he plays in the national tournament 40 minutes, man. Next game again. This guy's conditioning is crazy, and he's ready to play. But where does he go? I have no idea, man.
Yeah.
He can go to, for example, the Knicks, and they trade away Mitchell Robinson, for example. I was like, damn, that's great, man. I love it for him. He can go to New Orleans, and they trade away Jonas Valanciunas.
He's a free agent this year. He's a free agent now, yeah. That could be their replacement.
Yeah. You can go to Sacramento at 13. That's the guy I need, man. Because Sabonis,
extra
as good as he is
Sabonis.
Offensively, defensively, he's going to need a guy like Edey, man.
Exactly.
Multiple teams where he fits.
There's a role for him regardless across the spectrum there.
Yeah, exactly. And I think his dominance at the rim is worth the price. And to me, he's not the top 5 pick or something like that. But the first round, yeah, man, why not? I see him there.
Make it happen.
I think it would, yeah, man. I think it would maybe still undersell him. Who knows? He's the biggest who knows type of guy, man. Because he can be playing 10 games and be out of the league. And we always like, damn, man. There's one again who fooled us. It's like Luka Garza, for example.
Dude, shout out to Luka Garza. Exactly. Yeah, like it really
College dominance in the NBA, last game.
Not so much, not his thing. And that's okay. Yeah. One of those things. Ersin, I want to say thank you so much for coming on and lending your time and your expertise. We have to make this happen again for sure. I really would appreciate that. Definitely. I'm telling you, it's going to happen. Now she said it. If you're down for it, let's do this again. Definitely.
Yeah, for sure, man.
Really appreciate it.
It'll be an honor to come back again, man. Love talking to you.
I appreciate it, man. Same here. It's been so much fun. I would like you, if you could just take a moment to tell the good folks where they can find you and your work. Like I said, you do, and you know this, but really, really good work. If people need to get on this, obviously how they can contribute, support, all of that. But please share where folks can find you and the work that you do.
Well, I think before this year, it wasn't 99% of the time on Twitter. But you can find me on Twitter still. I tweet daily, and basis is Edemir NBA. It's EDMIR NBA. And this year I started my Substack, edmirmba.substack.com. If you subscribe, you don't have to, but if you really want it, I'm focusing on the guys that no one else focusing on. Not to be contrarian, but I just want to put everyone in the spotlight, you know. And I want to grow the newsletter to somewhere that, more people see it. I'm just focusing on those, the typical sleeper picks. Of course, every now and then I wrote about Cody Williams. I wrote about, I'm thinking about the top guys, but not many of them. Johnny Salone early in the year, for example. Yes. I wrote about them as well. And Bronny James. Of course, you want to have some articles that are read every now and then, but mostly the sleepers, man. I'm just focusing on value, rotational pieces, specific roles. My style is, if you're interested in the guy's NBA role specifically, nothing more than that, I have it. I go in depth as much as I can on that on my Substack. Yeah. And I finished the piece on Keshad Johnson just earlier today on his NBA role. So if you're down to guys like him, yeah, man. But again, to be honest, if you're looking for the next, the top guys, scouting report like that, I don't have that. So that's the nuance.
I love that, though. I think that's really cool. There's a lot of places that do have that. You want something different, want deep dive analysis for players that aren't in your top 10 that you don't hear around the water cooler. I think Ersin's your guy. So I definitely think that either way, it's really, really cool. And thank you for the work you do, man. And again, thank you for coming on. We really do appreciate you.
I appreciate you, man. I had a lot of fun doing this. And again, man, whenever you want me to come on, I'm glad to do so, bro.
Okay. Thank you. I'm going to hold it to. We're going to make that happen. I'm looking forward to it for sure, friend. Thank you. And folks, listen, you know where to find him. I'll have his information in the description for this show. So definitely make sure to check that out. But you can find me on Twitter at Corban NBA, CORBAN NBA. Make sure to stay in touch with, of course, roster reconstruction on Swish Theory. We're going to be doing a little bit more as we keep going here. I have my own mock draft, big board. I'll drop coming out here soon. We have a lot more content, off-season previews, all of that will be moving forward here. So definitely make sure to stay tuned for that. But listen, for Ersin, for myself, we are Frosty. Y'all stay frosty, and we'll talk to y'all real soon. All right, y'all.